everybody, this is Cheri at tjsundry.blogspot.com, and who doesn't love flowers? Well, okay, I know there's a few people that don't like flowers, but I love crafting with flowers, and these flowers are some of my favorites. These are from the Wildflowers 1 and 2 from Tim Holtz. Now, I haven't purchased number 3 yet, but I definitely will be getting them because I love these for crafting, and I really like them for clean and simple cards. So stick around and we're going to make a clean and simple card. But don't be fooled, it's still pretty, it's still elegant, and at the end we're going to take it a few steps more to give it just a little bit more pop. So stick around as we use these flowers to make some great cards. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a clean and simple card, and I love the elegance of this card, but this is also one that is very simple to reproduce. So at the end, I'm going to show you some of the variations that I've done with this card, but to start with, I pulled out these Salvage Patina inks. Now I used both the Distress Oxide Spray and the Distress Ink Spray. And you might wonder, why did you use both? Well, I wanted that play with the different depths because they come across on the paper a little bit differently. Now I'm not going to show what I did on camera, but I just simply took what would be an A2 size 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I put it in my splat box and sprayed it with both. So you can see the contrast, and I don't know if it picks it up as well on camera, but you've got the creaminess and the oxidationness of the oxide one, and then you also have the more bold, I guess you would say, of the Distress Spray that's just the ink, not the oxidation. So one tip is when you're mass producing things, do them in steps. So what I did is I cut all my cards, I cut all my panels, I cut all my card bases because this is a card base that I'm making. I cut all of those things, and then I went through and I sprayed everything. And then while the panels were drying, because I was making so many cards, while the panels were drying, then I could go in and do my die cutting. Now this was pretty fabulous to die cut because I chose which flowers I wanted to use from the 2 sets. And then I could run 3 or 4 through at a time, and so that also saved me when I was printing or cutting my flowers. I think by the time it was said and done, I had about 26 flowers that I cut. Okay, so we're going to jump into the card. Pretty simple card. So the next thing that I wanted was a good sentiment. And I wanted one that took up quite a bit of space, and I went in and I found from my Spellbinders, I get the small die of the month set, and I also get the stamp of the month set. So from May, we had the borders and sentiment set, and I didn't use the dies at all. I just put mine in these packages together, but I love the sentiment set. And when I saw this, I hug you with my heart every day. I knew that's exactly what I wanted, because for this clean and simple card, I wanted it to be big to cover a good portion, but I really wanted it to be a saying that meant a lot. So I've got it lined up in my stamp platform here, and we're going to do some embossing. So when I lined it up, I have it lined up to where the sentiment was pretty much in the same place on all of the cards. However, when you're looking at your panels, one thing is you want to make sure that you've got the most solid spot possible, or you may lose your white embossing powder. Because I wanted to emboss in white. So this one worked out really well, where there was this big area here, and it's going to actually be just about right for where I want to emboss. Well, that is not what I meant to do. Don't do that. You don't want your magnets together, and you don't want to pinch your fingers in it because that hurts. Okay, so let's get our panel lined up. And as I said, this worked out perfectly with this area of oxidation because that's hitting pretty close to where I'm going to want to emboss. So I'm going to take my little powder bag here and rub that down. Now, I actually did the panels probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm just now getting to the stamping. So they are very dry, but you still want to use that anti-static powder to make sure that you're not leaving debris behind. And then I have my Versamark, and I know that's nasty and ugly, but it just works fine, so you don't have to worry about it. And you want to ink it up really well. Now, I was a little concerned about this this particular stamp because the sentiment is not, it's not real bold. It's almost kind of just delicate, but it does show well enough that I thought it would still look really good with the flowers. What you could do, and I did not feel the need to do this, I did ink up twice every time. What you could do is after adding your embossing powder, if you were concerned that you wanted maybe a little bit bolder statement, you could go ahead and do your embossing, and then you could come back and after you've heat embossed it, you could come back and stamp it again and do a second layer of embossing. And I thought about doing that, but when I was done, I thought, no, it looks okay. Now, I'm just tucking this piece of paper in here just simply so that I don't mess up my stamp platform, because I'll come back and clean up my stamp when I'm all done. So I have my white embossing powder here, and I chose the Ranger, this is extra fine detail white, and I just make sure that I go over it a few times. And you can even see on the camera just a little bit, you can see how that sentiment just, it blends into the background, but it doesn't get lost in this particular background. Now, when I'm done with the card, I'm going to show you some variations, because some of my panels that I didn't have that nice bold, and the white I was afraid was going to get a little bit lost. So I'll show you what I did. But right now we're going to heat this up. Okay, so that is all embossed and it's looking good. If it wasn't as bold as you like I said, you could maybe try to stamp it again and go back over with another layer, and that would just give it a little bit extra depth. I'm liking the way that this one's really looking, and so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And then we are going to start assembling our card. Now, often when I make cards, I cut the card base down, or the panel down to be 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, but this time I wanted to cover the whole panel. So this was a tip that I learned from somewhere. If you take your scoreboard and you put your card base up in the corner, that helps you really line things up when you are wanting to get things right on the edge. And I did that with this for all of the cards that I made. And that has not happened to me in a while. I'm not sure what's up with that. Let's get that back together. Okay, so we're just going to get that all lined up. Now, if you wanted to add a little bit of dimension, you could definitely pop this up on foam tape. Again, I'm going for clean and simple. I'm going for something that's easy to mail, and so I am going to do it this way. Now, the other thing is my card bases, in doing this, I found that some of my card bases were not quite sized correctly. Sometimes the card base was a little bit bigger than the panel. Sometimes the panel was a little bit bigger than the card base. And sometimes I just didn't get it on straight. So this one actually is pretty close and it looks great. But what I did is, and I'm going to show you because I've got the space to do it, but I went ahead and took my small tonic trimmer here, and whenever I had overhang of either side, I would just trim it off. I'm not worried if this isn't perfectly A2 size. I would rather have it all straight and not have any overhang on either side. And you know, if I trim off a sliver, a 1/16 of an inch or something like that from any of the sides, it's not going to impact this particular card, and it doesn't matter, it's still going to fit in the envelope, right? But it just finishes it off nicely. So now we're going to choose our flower, and I think for this one I'm going to just choose this simple flower, and I have been using this Gina K Connect glue because I like that you can just dot on it. Now this is a brand new bottle of glue, and so the dots are a little bit more robust than what I necessarily need on such a delicate flower. So when I'm doing that, what I try to do is that first drop, I usually try to put in a big space, just like you saw me do there, so that if I get a lot of glump out, it doesn't just make a big mess all over my card. Now, these flowers are very delicate, and you can see I'm just dotting the glue. When we do the next card, you'll see even more how I just barely dot it. As long as you've got the tips down, there's going to be enough glue in the middle to hold it. And see, I even slipped there. Thankfully, this glue dries clear, and so you won't see the little mess left behind. But I want my points down solid because I don't want those to get caught in the envelope when it's being mailed. But then we're all done with the card. Wasn't that simple? And isn't it pretty? I just love the look of the white on the selvage patina backgrounds. I just think it's a gorgeous effect. Now, I mentioned, let me clean up that glue so I don't set a card into it. I mentioned that it's really important that you have a solid space because otherwise the white gets lost. And I had a couple that I did that I couldn't adjust it right. So I tried a couple of different things, and this one I used the Ranger Silver embossing powder, and it made it a little bit easier to see because I was afraid with so much white space I was going to not be able to see like that half of my sentiment or that quarter of my sentiment. So I still like the white better, but that worked, and it's still a very nice card. On this one, same thing, only this time I tried the Ranger Princess Gold embossing powder. Again, the white is definitely my favorite. Now the next one that I did was completely different because I had a nice solid piece right here almost in the middle. So I shifted my panel so that I would stamp my sentiment there, and then I made sure and chose a very small flower so that I could kind of arc it over. Again, if you weren't doing the whole, if whoever receives your card doesn't know that it doesn't match the others, and it still looks great. Okay, so now let's move in to the next card. So I will be right back, and we will take that card and add a few things just to make it a little bit more special. Okay, so we've got our card panel here, again like the others. Now, because I knew that I was going to be doing this one a little differently, I wasn't worried about choosing a background that didn't have that big bold solid, although I think I probably could have turned it this way and gotten away with putting white here, but I'm doing something a little bit different with this one, so I wasn't worried that it was kind of a more all over spray. But man, isn't that gorgeous? Just that selvage patina coming through. When you're spraying like that, you just never know what your background is going to look like exactly, and I just love the way that looks. But this time we're going to start with our flower a little bit, and I have pulled out my little Distress ink in mustard seed, and this is the first time I've ever used these, but I bought these little detail blending tools, so I thought I would try using that, and I just want to add just a hint of color. Now I may decide when I'm done that I don't like it, and so I may just not use the hint of color because I do really like the white on the selvage patina. But what I'm doing is I'm just barely, I put a little bit more bold in the middle, and then I am just barely touching the tip to the different balls on that flower to give it a little bit more dimension. Now again, if I don't like it, I just won't use it and I'll save the flower for something else. This is not a waste. There's always room for the flower later. So that is how that would look, and it does give it a nice little pop of color. Now the other thing I wanted to do to just kind of make that sentiment stand out is I wanted to put the sentiment on something. So rather than do it on camera because I wasn't sure which color I wanted to go ahead and try a couple of different. So I took the Princess Gold and I put it on this piece of vellum just to see if I like the gold. So there is one way that it looks, and again with all that shine it's kind of hard to see in there. But this was just a scrap that I had, and quite frankly I really didn't think that I was going to use this. I was just using it for a sample to see how I liked the gold on the vellum on the card. And but after I did it, I kind of changed my plan a little bit. So we'll come back to that. This is the silver, and this was another idea that I had, is going something like this and putting the silver there, and we could still, and doing the silver or the gold here, and we could still do that. And then if we adhered it behind the back, you wouldn't have to worry about the adhesive, and then you could put the flower over that. I don't really like that well, and honestly, I really think I just like this piece that with the torn edge. I just like the way that it looks. So I think I'm just going to use that just like that. So I thought about, okay, I could just kind of put it over here like so, and then maybe put my flower over the top like that. Now, after I see that yellow, I don't like it. I like the white on white. So let's decide which flower we're going to use instead. So I've got one of these left. He's super cute, but he almost needs to go over this side of the flower, just like that. Again, that glare makes it hard to see, but that's kind of pretty. I have this smaller flower here. Let's see how that one looks. Oh, I like that. What if we just went right in the center just like that and put our flower over the top? I think I like that. I think that's what we're going to do. Now, I feel like we could bring this in just a little bit. I like the torn edge, and we're going to keep the torn edge on that side. But I think that's a little bit better. Okay, and then we're going to put this guy over the top. So let's go ahead and assemble our card. Again, still pretty clean and simple, but it's just adding that little extra touch. Okay, so we're going to line that all back up just like we talked about earlier when we were doing our clean and simple cards, and adhere this down. Now, if you've worked with vellum, you know that you have to be careful when you're adhering vellum down, because it's really hard to get it where you can't see the adhesive underneath it. So we're going to have to think about that a little bit when we go to attach our stuff together. And I'll show you kind of my ideas on that when we get ready to do that. So I've got it pretty square. I do have more overhang than I would like. So again, going back to our tip here, I'd rather have it too big than not big enough, right? So let's just line that up. Now this cutter cuts through all 3 layers with no problem. You just want to swoosh that down purposefully. Otherwise, if you're not holding your guard down strongly and you're not purposeful when you're doing that, you're going to end up with it slipping. Okay, so actually before I do that, let me look at this. Let's try it like this. Maybe I like that even better. Okay, maybe we'll just do it like that. The only problem with that is that gives me less to adhere. Yeah, I think we'll do it like that. Okay, so I know that's a lot of white space, but I just love the clean look of the white space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by trying to put my glue, and I'm going to come off camera a little bit because I want it really narrow. I'm going to try to put my glue kind of behind my letters a little bit, because that'll kind of help hide it a little bit. Now, again, it's still going to, you're still going to see some of that goopiness, so I try to go as thinly as I can. The other thing is we'll figure out where the die cut goes, and we'll put some glue behind where the die cut would land, because that gives us a little bit more area too. So again, I don't think I'm going to be able to hide it all completely, and I'm still getting even a little bit more glue than I would like. But so if we're going there, if I go kind of here, I could put a little bit of glue right here. That. Okay. gonna not quite center it. It's a little bit off centered, but it's almost centered, if that makes sense. So there we go with that. Now we can glue down our flower, and of course the glue won't be as noticeable on the flower, but I'll just position the glue so that it will kind of go behind where some of that was. Like so. If we come down like that, it kind of takes away from the fact that there's glue behind there. Again, I'm paying special attention to your points because that's the part that's going to get caught in the envelope when you do that. Isn't that pretty? I hope that dries so that you can't see that, but if it doesn't, it doesn't, and that's just the way it's going to be. It's still a gorgeous card. Now, if you wanted to, you could add maybe some sequins or some jewels. I have these little jewels that maybe would look pretty. Let's see. I don't know that it needs it. You know, if you had some Nuvo drops, that would be pretty as well. But maybe add a few of these here and there. Let's see what that looks like. Does it need it? I don't know that it needs it. Oh, that would give me another point there. No, I just don't think it needs it there, although that's kind of pretty up here. That was odd. That's kind of pretty, just like that, isn't it? Now, of course, another thing to keep in mind is if you're adding something with that much dimension, you're going to have to watch out because you're going to have to pay more postage or put it in a padded envelope because that is going to just rip apart your envelope and possibly your card if they machine it. You can put hand cancel only, but that doesn't mean it's going to get hand canceled. Just saying. Jewels, no jewels. I think I'm going with no jewels. I just like the simple elegance of it just the way it is. So there we have our finished card, and like I said, hopefully that will kind of dry out. I could, if I decide that it doesn't, I could potentially, oh, maybe we should just do that anyway. I do like that, and it definitely hides that. Let's just do that. Sometimes the ideas just come, other times not so much. Oh, I like that. So obviously there's going to be some that I'm going to have to chop off the edge. So again, paying attention to those points in particular. And honestly, this is not going to add much bulk at all to your card, and so you shouldn't even need an extra stamp for this because it's just a die cut. The other thing is you could, if you wanted to add some dimension, you could also add a few pieces of, you could layer these on top of each other, and that would give you, you could just add a little bit of dimension by layering them on top of each other. I thought about doing that and I decided not to, but that is another option that you have. So I'm just going to take my scissors here and just chop that off right like that. Because I do want it to go in an envelope, I'll go ahead and chop that off just like that too, and let it hang off the card. And then just put it down. Perfect solution. Those two little flowers stacked on top of each other covers up the adhesive that you were seeing underneath. And there we have our card. Still clean and simple, still elegant, but just picked up a notch to just add that little bit of a special touch to it. So thanks so much for stopping by today, and remember, take some time to enjoy the little things. Hey, by the way, if you would like to see other videos in this series, I am going to put a box up in the corner where you can go back to the beginning of the series and play through the whole series. Plus, if you wouldn't mind, hit subscribe up in this corner, and you'll be notified when I put other videos up as well. So thanks so much for stopping by today. Talk to you later. Bye.